Have you ever heard of El Dorado, the lost city of gold? It's a name that conjures images of gleaming temples, streets paved with gold, and unimaginable riches hidden deep within the Amazon rainforest. But what if I told you the real story is far more complex and fascinating than the myth? And what if the real El Dorado wasn't a city at all, but a man? Our story begins not with a map, but with a ritual. High in the Andes Mountains of modern-day Colombia, near a sacred lake called Guatavita, lived the Muisca people. For them, gold wasn't currency. It was a sacred offering, a way to connect with the gods. Their most important ceremony was the investiture of a new chief, or Zipa. Imagine this. The new leader is covered in sticky tree resin and then coated entirely in fine gold dust, transforming him into a living statue of pure gold. He becomes El Dorado, literally, the gilded one. He is then taken to the center of Lake Guatavita on a ceremonial raft, surrounded by his priests. As the sun rises, casting a golden glow on the water, he offers precious emeralds and gold artifacts to the gods, casting them into the lake's dark depths. Finally, he dives into the water, washing the gold from his body as a final, magnificent offering. This wasn't a daily occurrence, but a rare, sacred rite that solidified the bond between the Muisca, their leader, and their deities. This incredible ritual was a regional secret, a sacred tradition known only to the Muisca and their neighbors. But in the 16th century, everything changed. Spanish conquistadors arrived, driven by a thirst for wealth that was almost religious in its fervor. They had already plundered the vast treasures of the Aztec and Inca empires, but their greed was insatiable. They started hearing whispers, fragmented rumors from different tribes about a gilded man, a lake full of gold, and a ceremony of immense wealth. In the minds of the conquistadors, these separate stories began to merge and morph. The gilded man became a golden king. The sacred lake became a city of gold. The ritual became a daily life of opulent splendor. The Muisca's deeply spiritual practice was twisted by European greed into a fantasy of material wealth. A lost city, a shining metropolis called El Dorado. This was the birth of the myth that would consume the lives of thousands and reshape a continent. The first to truly chase this phantom city was Gonzalo Jiménez de Quesada. In 1536, he led a brutal expedition from the Caribbean coast deep into the Colombian interior. Of the 900 men who started the journey, fewer than 200 survived the treacherous mountains, dense jungles, disease, and battles with indigenous tribes. They did eventually find the Muisca people, and, while they didn't find a city of gold, they found a civilization rich in it. They tortured the Muisca leaders for information about the mythical city, desecrated their temples, and attempted to drain Lake Guatavita. They found some gold, yes, but it was nothing compared to the fantasy they held in their minds. The real prize, the city of El Dorado, remained elusive. But Quesada's failure to find a city didn't kill the myth. It only fueled it. If the gold wasn't here, it must be somewhere else deeper in the jungle, further up the river just beyond the next mountain range. The legend detached itself from its Muisca origins and began to wander across the map of South America. Enter the German conquistadors. Under a strange colonial deal, a part of Venezuela was granted to the German Welser banking family. Men like Ambrosius Anninger and Nikolaus Federmann launched their own horrifying expeditions. They weren't just searching, they were pillaging, enslaving, and murdering their way through the wilderness, driven by the phantom of gold. Anger's journey was so brutal that his own men reportedly turned to cannibalism to survive. He was eventually killed by an indigenous arrow, never having found his golden prize. The obsession was like a fever. Gonzalo Pizarro, the brother of the man who conquered the Incas, launched one of the most disastrous expeditions of all. In 1541, he set out from Quito with hundreds of Spaniards, thousands of indigenous porters, and a herd of livestock. His second in command was Francisco de Orellana. As they journeyed into the Amazon, conditions became unbearable. Men starved, falling prey to disease and the jungle itself. Desperate, Pizarro sent Orellana downriver on a constructed boat to find food. But Orellana and his men were swept away by the current. They never returned to Pizarro's main party. Instead, they continued down the river, eventually completing the first ever navigation of the entire Amazon River, finally reaching the Atlantic Ocean. It was an incredible feat of exploration, but it was born from a failed quest for gold. Pizarro, meanwhile, limped back to Quito with only a handful of survivors, his expedition a complete and utter catastrophe. Perhaps the most infamous seeker of El Dorado was Lope de Aguirre. He joined an expedition in 1560, but his ambition was too dark and twisted for a mere second-in-command. He instigated a mutiny, murdered the expedition's leader, and declared himself Prince of Peru, Tierra Firme, and Chile. He wrote a defiant letter to King Philip II of Spain, renouncing his allegiance and calling himself the Wrath of God. Aguirre's journey down the Amazon was a terrifying spiral into madness and paranoia. He killed his own men, his own officers, and ultimately, his own daughter to prevent her from being captured by his enemies. He was a tyrant, a madman, whose quest for a city of gold became a journey into the darkest parts of the human soul. He found no gold, only a bloody end at the hands of Spanish forces. For centuries, the search continued. Even the English got involved, with Sir Walter Raleigh leading 2 expeditions to the Orinoco River Basin in what is now Venezuela. He was convinced El Dorado was there, and he wrote a book, The Discovery of Guyana, that further cemented the legend in the European imagination. He too failed, and his obsession with El Dorado ultimately cost him his head, executed by King James I. So, after centuries of searching, after countless lives lost and immeasurable suffering, what was found? No golden city. No paved streets of treasure. El Dorado, the city, was never real. It was a projection, a fantasy born from the collision of 2 vastly different worlds. But here's the twist. Archaeology has proven that fragments of the original story are true. In 1969, a stunning gold artifact was found in a cave near Bogota. It's a small, exquisite model of a raft, carrying a prominent central figure and his attendants, all crafted from gold. It's known as the Muisca raft, and it's a near-perfect depiction of the El Dorado ceremony. It's tangible proof of the ritual that started it all. Furthermore, attempts to drain Lake Guatavita from the conquistadors to modern corporations have yielded hundreds of gold artifacts and emeralds from its muddy bottom, confirming it as a sacred site of offerings. The truth was always there, but the conquistadors were blinded by their own greed. They couldn't see the cultural and spiritual wealth of the Muisca. They could only see material riches. They were looking for a city, but the real El Dorado was a man, a ritual, and a sacred lake. Today, El Dorado has become a powerful metaphor. We use it to describe any elusive prize we chase, whether it's wealth, fame, or some unattainable ideal. It's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, the ultimate quest that promises everything, but often leads to ruin. The story of El Dorado is more than just a failed treasure hunt. It's a cautionary tale about the destructive power of greed and obsession. It shows how a story can be twisted and weaponized to justify conquest and colonization. It is a story of human imagination, our capacity to build fantasies so powerful they can change the course of history, redrawing maps and toppling empires, all in the pursuit of a ghost. The Golden City was never found, but the myth of El Dorado reshaped. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the heart of the El Dorado myth. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more deep dives into history's greatest legends. Let me know in the comments what other historical mysteries you'd like to see explored. Until next time, stay curious,